Go, the Bettenhausen Story by Carl Hungness, narrated by Stark Wilson. Chapter 1. I Can Do That. The new Ford was going at least 60. Its driver smiled when he saw the redhead standing in the yard at the corner. Without letting off the gas, he jerked the wheel to the left and began a slide onto Harlem Avenue. Eyes widening, the girl anticipated an accident. It'd tip over sure. As he snapped the steering wheel all the way back to the right so the skinny tires were pointing in the direction of the slide, he looked out the window, grinned, and shouted, "Hi, Val!" She could see a rooster tail of dirt flying from under the churning rear wheels, and in a second he was gone. His fancy driving and new car. Ugh! That Bettenhausen boy, who's he trying to impress? Tony had already gained a reputation around Tinley Park as a show-off, but a popular show-off. Blessed with a smile that tagged a kid a charmer, he was christened Melvin Eugene Bettenhausen. But he wasn't a horn-rimmed Melvin. He was cocky and feisty. Out on the family farm, he boxed every day with Frank Jackson, head of the hired hands. Frank would stand tall and shout, "I'm Jack Dempsey. Now, who'll be Gene Tunney?" "I'm Tooney," Tony would boast, and thus the name stuck. He was good at pretending he was a tough guy. When the tough guy act didn't work, he'd hit out with the charm. That worked. And when he was caught digging ruts in the Tinley Park streets with the back wheels of his new Ford, or sliding around corners daredevil style, the town cop shook his head. "Melvin Eugene Bettenhausen." He said the name distinctly. "Better slow down. Next time, I'll tell Clarence." Clarence was tough. Tony could usually talk his way out of almost any problem with Mom, but you couldn't bluff Clarence. He was probably more strict than Dad. What could Dad have been like anyway? Tony often wondered. All he knew was a photograph. Tall, black hair, deep eyes, dead at 48, kicked in the chest by a workhorse. Christian H. Bettenhausen, born on the farm his father had purchased when he migrated from Bremen, Germany. Dad had made the land pay, and Mom and Clarence sold corn and beans and milk enough to take care of the 9 of them. It hadn't been easy. Tony remembered Mom telling how, after the funeral, she had gathered the children around the kitchen table and prayed that God would guide them, keep them together, make them good. She named Clarence head of the family. It was his duty. He couldn't dodge it. He must guide his brothers and sisters from Herbert to little Melvin. The excitement of Chicago, only an hour's drive away, had not lured the Bettenhausen sons, even though they read the Chicago Tribune every day. Men were out of work everywhere. Soup lines formed 4 blocks long off State Street. But there was no depression on the Bettenhausen farm. Good crops, chickens, hogs, cows. Everyone had his chores. But Tony didn't take much pride in his. Yet by the time he was 13, he was the farm handyman. Clarence couldn't do without him. Tony had already learned to drive by the time he was a teenager and was fascinated by anything that had wheels on it. He liked to get his hands dirty with those things under the hoods of Model A Fords and tractors, things that most people didn't know anything about. Let somebody else fix them when they didn't run. But not Tony. When they didn't start, there was always a simple reason. Know what you were doing, and Tony always knew exactly what he was doing. All you had to do was ask him. "I could fix that," he'd say, and he could usually back up his claims. When caught experimenting, he'd tell you he was going to make something work better. "I don't know if you're just plain lazy or smart," Clarence told him after Tony had installed an electric pump on their hand-operated well. "Try her now, Clarence." He wanted his brothers to be proud of him. They mustn't call him Mama's boy and be jealous. Once, when he was 15, someone was needed to drive the milk route around the neighboring farms. Each morning farmers left their cans in the small white milk houses out front for collection. Tony told Clarence he could handle the job if he could use the truck. Clarence warned him first. People would be depending on him.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?